Psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms as they're often called, are illegal in Canada. But after decades on the list of illicit substances, researchers here and around the world want a fresh start for this fungus. They say it can deliver life-changing effects for mental illness, palliative care, and more. So, is it time to legalize medical mushrooms? With us on that, in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, Dr. Valerie Masuda, a palliative care physician and associate professor of clinical medicine at the University of British Columbia. She provides psilocybin-assisted therapy. In Vancouver, BC, Mark Hayden, adjunct professor at the University of British Columbia School of Population and Public Health. He was formerly executive director of MAPS Canada. That's the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And here in our studio, lawyer Paul Lewin, who focuses on matters related to cannabis and psychedelics and is currently involved in a legal challenge in federal court to fight the status of psilocybin. Paul, good to have you back here in our studio. I know you were on the show many years ago, and to our guests in Points Beyond, thank you for joining us as well. Let me just set up our conversation with this. Last February, Elizabeth May, co-leader of the Green Party, and other MPs joined a delegation of patients and healthcare practitioners to call on the feds to make psilocybin, the psychedelic compound produced by magic mushrooms, more readily available. Here's what she said. We need to do more research, May said, but to get that research done, we need to make access available to patients whose doctors are there to help them with registered therapists who know how to administer psilocybin. This past November, we saw Colorado legalize magic mushrooms, becoming the second American state to do so after Oregon. We have also seen magic mushroom dispensaries pop up in cities across Canada. Okay, Valerie, start us off here. How would you characterize this moment for magic mushrooms and psilocybin-assisted therapy today?
I'm very optimistic at this point. I find that in the past, with Richard Nixon in 1972, basically crushing psychedelic assisted therapy in research as well as in treatment, we're starting to see a very cautious resurgence of research as well as really promising evidence that this is a medication that can be used very safely in the treatment of treatment-resistant depression and anxiety. And with my patient population with existential distress related to their cancer diagnosis. And now we're starting to see the federal government just start to fund the clinical trials to show the promise of these medications in the use of mental health conditions. Okay,
Paul, to you, where are we at right now on this issue?
Well, there's a lot of problems with medical access, but generally where we're at with psilocybin is it's really a revolution in Canadian society. And I think it started about 3 years ago. And I'm just seeing a large percent of the population turning to psychedelics and psilocybin. And so it's kind of the beginning of a revolution if I was to characterize this moment in time.
What do you think prompted the revolution?
You know, I don't know. The war on drugs is increasingly being seen as a failure, but people have turned to other drugs. Research is increasing. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure what's changing Canadians' minds.
Mark, do you think the hype can live up to the let me rephrase that. Can the reality live up to the hype that we're hearing about the potential for psilocybins right now?
Well, that's an interesting question because I tend to be cautionary. The research evidence that psilocybin is helpful for many different diagnoses is compounding. We know, or we have very good evidence that it's useful for depression, end-of-life anxiety, and addiction issues. And so that's growing, but I'm also cautionary. I think that we can overemphasize the benefits and not explore some of the concerns, and that can result in overselling, and then it could result in disappointment, and then a backlash. It's interesting for me to compare it to the whole cannabis process, because cannabis was legalized because it was seen as being harmless, and the harms of prohibition were greater than the harms of cannabis itself. But they didn't medicalize it. It was just popular opinion that legalized cannabis. Psychedelics are being legalized as well, slowly, but not through popular opinion. It's being legalized because they're going through stage 1 and through 2 and 3 clinical trials. That changes popular opinion.
Do you have a view as to whether you agree with Paul as to whether we're in the midst of a revolution on this right now?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I mean, psychedelics are back. You know, my wife is a psychiatrist, and I've looked her straight in the eye and said, you know, we are going to change your profession. Psychedelic medicine is going to change psychology, psychiatry, clinical social work, nursing. The evidence for its effectiveness is compounding and compelling.
Well, one of the reasons there's so much excitement right now are because of the number of trials and studies that are happening. And let's, Sheldon, if you would, bring up this graphic and we'll talk about that. In 2016, there was a study conducted at Johns Hopkins University in the States that found that just a single dose of psilocybin offered relief to subjects suffering from depression and anxiety related to life-threatening cancers. And then 6 months after receiving treatment, 78% experienced lower rates of depression and 83% experienced lower rates of anxiety. In 2022, another study showed that 58% of patients with severe depression, unrelated to a cancer diagnosis, who received 2 doses of psilocybin together with therapy had a substantial and sustained remission in symptoms a year later compared to other patients on a waiting list for this treatment. Okay, Valerie, let me get you back in here because you've guided a number of people through this therapy. First off, how do you do this therapy with them?
So it has to be really clear that the magic mushroom is not the magic bullet. So you can't go out and take some magic mushrooms and then you're cured. So this is in context of a proper therapeutic program. It's much like, you know, a procedure. So it's like a shoulder replacement. You know, you don't just give a patient an artificial shoulder. There's a surgeon that needs to be involved. There's rehabilitation that needs to be involved. And it's similar to this. So a patient needs to be prepared with a therapist and a physician for the administration of this medicine. The medicine is given in a very, we call it a setting of peace and tranquility, of safety, where the patient feels safe and has a safe relational experience with their therapist and the physician. And then after that, they have this integration period. So the psilocybin allows the brain to have a period of what I would say neuroplasticity. So previous thought and behavior patterns that are currently ingrained in the brain, then there's an opportunity for those thought and behavior patterns to kind of be released. And now you have an opportunity to go in and create new thought and behavior patterns that are healthy. So I have had patients who have had psilocybin with the preparation, but were not able to have that integration. And within a month, they have fallen back into their usual thought and behaviors.
What's the success
So
rate,
it's
though,
very,
that you,
very
in your
important.
experience?
I would say it's about 70 to 80% success rate as
Well,
long
that's
as the
pretty good.
patient is able to continue. So it is very, very, very good. When we look at, you know, the use of pharmaceuticals, which obviously in my patient population don't really help. When a patient has a cancer diagnosis and they're going to die, you know, the only thing that's going to cure that anxiety and distress is a cure of their cancer. So if they're faced with a terminal illness, then they really struggle with that. So seeing patients transform from being a period of hopelessness and purposelessness to then being able to go ahead and accept their diagnosis, accept their dying, and being able to reconnect with their family and friends over those really important months is it's incredible.
Okay, let's get a legal update here. Paul, what is the current legal status of psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms in Canada today?
So psilocybin it's prohibited to possess, to sell, to give, to grow, to export, to import. Essentially, everything to do with psilocybin is prohibited unless it's subject to one of the 3 narrow means of legal medical access, which are, you've heard Dr. Masuda mention, the Section 56 exemptions.
Section 56 of what?
That's Section 56 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act.
There we go.
In which the government may exempt a person if it's medically necessary. There's a Special Access Program, which has kind of replaced the Section 56 exemptions. And then you could hope to catch on with a clinical trial.
How tough is it to get any one of those 3 options?
Well, they're all problematic. So the government's not really granting 56s anymore. SAPs, there's a lot of problems around the special access program, and probably central to this is the fact that the government is the gatekeeper. It should be the doctor as gatekeeper. So this is a very personal decision that should be between patient and doctor. The doctor is the person who is legally committed to acting in the patient's best interest. The government is not obliged to do that. They may issue an SAP or a 56. They don't have to. They can reject it for reasons unrelated.
And when you say they, the government, are we talking the Ministry of Health?
Minister of Health, yes. And this requires a complex application that the doctor completes for the patient. It involves sending a lot of very private, sensitive, personal information to the government, to the minister, and unknown bureaucrats. It involves delays. It involves convincing them that this is really a treatment of last resort, that you've tried every other kind of invasive therapy and nasty pharmaceutical, and this isn't the way it should be. It should be a decision between patient and doctor.
So in your judgment, it's still way too restrictive.
Way too restrictive, and it's just a failed model.
Okay. Mark, let me go to you. For someone in Canada who wants to undergo this type of therapy, maybe they have one of the three options, difficult though they may be, available to them. What sort of legal access do they have available to them right now? What are the chances of getting it?
Well, I'd like to elaborate on the last comments, is that we also have de facto decriminalization. So we have, as you may know, mushroom shops popping up in Vancouver everywhere. So there's a long history of this. The Vancouver Police Department has been very progressive. And when Stephen Harper in the previous era announced an increased draconian nature to the cannabis laws, the Vancouver Police Department publicly stated they would no longer enforce cannabis laws. And then we had cannabis dispensaries popping up everywhere. We have the same process now happening with mushrooms, as the Vancouver Police Department have said they're not going to enforce mushroom laws. And so we have mushroom dispensaries everywhere. Now, there's pros and cons to that. The advantage is it allows people to see a normalized access to a psychedelic drug. The con is that it doesn't fully engage with the therapeutic process. It doesn't really provide mushrooms in the context that Valerie was talking about, of where you control for set and setting, expectation, environment, where you screen people appropriately and provide a skilled experience for people. So there's a pro and con to mushroom stops, but they're actually everywhere in Vancouver.
Well, Paul, can you tell us whether that's the case in Ontario? Do we have dispensaries popping up everywhere, and have the cops in this city and or province basically decided to turn a blind eye to it all?
Well, there's some in urban centers like Toronto and Ottawa and Hamilton. Some have been raided, and people are facing charges. People caught with psilocybin in a context other than a psilocybin store are readily charged, and prosecutors will seek jail. And I agree, Vancouver is sort of its own world, and that's great. But unfortunately, the rest of the country isn't where Vancouver's at.
So we, in your judgment, do not have, quote unquote, reasonable access to it in Ontario right now.
We don't have reasonable access to it, and really, I think the failure of reasonable access is driving the black market.
Okay, there have been, I gather, a number of smaller clinical trials using psilocybin with promising results. Do we know, Valerie, let me go to you on this. Do we know categorically now that this is a safe product to use under a doctor's care?
I think we can categorically say that psilocybin is very safe. There is no lethal dose of psilocybin. It is safer than caffeine. It is safer than nicotine. It's very much safer than alcohol. Of course, if people take a large dose of psilocybin, they are in a situation where they can be very emotionally, physically, or spiritually vulnerable. And so people taking large doses of psilocybin in very unsafe environments can be harmful. So it's more of a psychological or psychiatric harm that they would be exposing themselves to. So it has to be, I think, delivered in a very safe environment. And the people that are in the therapeutic environment with the patient, the physicians and therapists, we have to have professional accountability for those therapists and professionals. And the only way we can do that is through the professional colleges. And so these professional regulators currently are not putting forth guidelines or criteria for treating patients, or even guidelines for physicians and registered clinical counselors to have specific training in psychedelic medicine. So there's no real safety currently for patients accessing on the street.
Mark, are there some people for whom this is not a good option, that it is too dangerous for them to use?
Yes. There are certain screen exclusion criteria, is what you're asking for. Specifically, mania. I think psychedelics are generally destructive for people with mania. There are certain personality disorders that we actually don't know if psychedelics are helpful for, and they can be harmful. So we don't know about youth and children. Psychedelics are generally not seen as being appropriate for youth and children. So appropriate screening is actually really, really important. And I want to echo what Valerie said. It's all about the context of use. So it's about the skill of the therapist. And part of the skill of the therapist is appropriate screening. There are some mental health diagnoses that we don't know whether they're helpful for. Now, curiously enough, there is a belief that I have that I would like to challenge many people in my position. Researchers generally believe that schizophrenia is an exclusion criteria, and there's a lot of evidence for that. But I've dug through all of the historical literature and have decided that it's not as simple as most researchers believe. I think that a very, very low dose of some psychedelics may be helpful for some people with schizophrenia. So there are some new things coming down the pipe, but we need to be very careful, and giving psychedelics to the wrong people will increase harms. And we want to get this right at this point in the drama.
Just for the record, you and I talked before we started about whether or not I could ask you about psilocybin and your own personal use of it. And you said, yes, it's okay, you can ask me. So I'm going to do that now. Because I've never tried it, so I have no clue about this. What was it like?
Well, it is a distinctive experience. I find that one's much more in the moment. I sometimes think about myself. It seems like I have a Rolodex of things I say to people in my life. I'm going to pull out number 9. And, on psilocybin tends to bring out a much more mindfulness in which I listen more carefully to those who speak to me. And I'm more in the moment, a little less caught up in my ego. And I find there's carryover effects to the next day. And a lot of people microdose, which are very small amounts and which don't make you high. And there's a huge amount of anecdotal evidence that this is actually doing tremendous amount of good.
Ever had an adverse reaction to it?
I have not.
You've not? Okay. And again, forgive my ignorance here. Do you take it in a pill form, or do you inject it, or how do you take it?
My experiences with it have been with the raw mushrooms, the dried mushrooms. But of course, patients getting it under the special access program would be getting synthetic psilocybin.
And that synthetic means what?
Synthetic. So it's been, and pardon my ignorance, but it's been, it's not the natural, and it's not an extract. It's something that's been made in a laboratory, and that's not the best description of it. So
it's better than what I could give you. So okay, we'll take that. Valerie, let me get you back in here. You have said. How does this discussion about medical access to mushrooms factor into the potential decision next year to expand medical assistance in dying to people with mental illnesses? Can you speak to that, please?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I actually was one of the witnesses for the Joint Standing Committee on MAID. For my palliative patients, I'm a assessor for medical assistance in dying, and there are many reasons why people access medical assistance in dying. But existential distress and psychological suffering is one. And when I can see a medication given to the right population of patients have a 70 to 80% effectiveness rate, where people are it's transformative, where people who feel they have no purpose in their life anymore because of a terminal illness, then completely changing and being able to live the rest of their life wholly and with joy and abundance. I've seen that happen. So when we talk about people with mental illnesses who have they're unemployed, they may have substance use disorder, they're isolated, they're lonely, for these people then to to be able to access a lethal injection over a medicine which is very safe and very effective does not make sense to me. So we should not, and as well as when we have people that are accessing medical assistance and dying because they lack access to the social determinants of health, I think this is morally wrong. And so I feel that people need to have access. They need to be given the choice about being able to access any psychedelics for the treatment for their depression or anxiety or mental suffering, because it has been shown to be effective.
Okay, just a few minutes to go here.
A lethal injection.
Right. With a few minutes to go here, let's just get a couple of practical questions on the record. Paul, what would it take to make this legal in Canada?
Well, I mean, of course, the government could choose to do the right thing. We have a court case before the court, and if we're successful...
Which court?
We're in federal court, and we're challenging the psilocybin regulations. And so if we're successful, three things are going to happen. There's going to be doctor as gatekeeper access. Healthcare professionals are going to be able to get legal access so they can be properly trained, which is about efficacy and safety for patients, as Dr. Masuda mentioned. And then finally, patients will have the choice of synthetic versus natural. But the beating heart of the case is doctor as gatekeeper. But to legalize across the board, the government just has to do the right thing.
Mark, can you imagine a scenario down the road where we have, for example, a college of psychedelic therapists who are part of the gatekeeping process to make sure this all works?
Absolutely, yes. And they should have access to a wide variety of psychedelics. They should have access to not only mushrooms, psilocybin, but LSD, mescaline, dimethyltryptamine, MEAI, MDMA, the list. They should have access to all psychedelics, because what we know is that different psychedelics are helpful for people in different contexts. There should be trained professionals providing the service that are accountable to a college, so that if they behave badly, they can be brought into a process that engages with discipline issues. These are incredibly powerful tools, and they're powerful tools that can be used skillfully, but partly because their power, they can also go wrong. So we have to be very careful in how we legalize these. I believe that psychedelics are on the track to becoming legalized. The challenge for our society is doing it well.
Let's finish off here with a quote from the New York Times. Sheldon, I'm at the bottom of the last page. Maybe you could bring this up. The question for many is how far and how fast the pendulum should swing. Even researchers who champion psychedelic-assisted therapy say the drive to commercialize the drugs, combined with a growing movement to liberalize existing prohibitions, could prove risky, especially for those with severe psychiatric disorders, and derail the field's slow, methodical return to mainstream acceptance. Paul, does that ring true for you?
I mean, it's not completely ridiculous, but I think we're also at a different moment in time in which we realize the drug war is a failure. There's a lot of people are having really positive experiences with this, and it's anecdotal evidence, but it's all kinds of terrific things that they're getting out of this. Adults should have the choice to make. It's not just a public health question, it's also a liberty question. And if adults want to use this for positive reasons, then they should be allowed to. Is everything going to be perfect? It won't, and nothing out there is perfect.
It took 150 years to legalize pot. How long do you think it'll take to get this legal?
I'd say the low-hanging fruit is a more open medical system. We probably will have that in the next 3 to 5 years, and I'd say 5 years after that. I'd say 10 years from today.
Interesting. Okay. My thanks to the three of you for helping us understand this issue so much better. Mark Hayden in Vancouver, British Columbia, Valerie Masuda in Dubai, UAE, and Paul Lewin here in our studio. Thanks so much to the three of you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.